I've always been uneased by that old elevator. The worn-down, poorly waxed wood walls, the dented metal door. Getting stuck 3 times before finally closing. Not to mention it sounded like any second the lines would snap and the death box would plummet down. But I worked on the top floor. And no way in hell I was walking 7 flights to add to my unease. I had arrived late, meaning I was taking the ride up alone. I stepped in and punched the button to reach my floor. As the elevator began to rise, I began to feel a strange sense of alarm rise inside me. The lift had me more unnerved than regular. My train of thought was interrupted by a small ding and my nerves were replaced with confusion. As I looked up to see I was on the 8th floor. And as mentioned previously, this building only had 7 floors. My train of thought was once again broken, and my sense of confusion rising drastically. As the rickety door opened to reveal an empty office, not like any office I've seen before, especially not mine. To say it was strange would be the understatement of the century. The floor looked to be one giant room. The walls were carpeted, and the floor was from the same looking wood as the elevator. The strangest part was the office supplies, the cubicles, or I guess ovucle. I'll let you take a shot in the dark at why I'm calling them that. Anyway, these ovucle had been on the ceiling, along with the desk and whatever was on it stuck to the ceiling. However, the chairs and more stranger, the computers remained on the ground. The chairs themselves were nothing you'd expect to see at an office. Old wooden stools with a thin padding. The computers, however, seemed to be the most high-quality money could buy. There were also a few painting here and there. However, all of them look like what I can only describe as blurry, all of which portraying rather boring things. One of a fridge, a fork, even a literal twig. I tried to close the doors. To no luck. After about a minute of button masking like this was MK, I gave up and went for my phone. I sighed to see neither Wi-Fi or connection. I sat in the elevator for a minute or two longer before slowly stepping inside this strange office. I was not happy about it, but it seemed to be my only option. As soon as my entirety entered the room, and I mean the very second, I heard the elevator ring, but when I turned around, instead of seeing a closed elevator door, I was met with a carpet wall. I stumbled back and began to break into a cold sweat. Slightly shaking, I didn't know what to do. I've dealt with some weird shit before, but never a vanishing, well, anything. This was just anything though. This was what seemed to be the only exit out of this place. Slowly I gathered my bearings, stood up and began walking forward, occasionally shouting out for someone to no response. As I made my way forward, it felt as the room was changing, almost as if it was getting narrower. Yet when I began to walk towards the walls to test this theory, I never even got any closer to the wall, as if I was walking in place. A large sense of danger quickly began to loom over me, a sense of danger so strong I felt the need to arm myself. I quickly grabbed one of the stools and smashed it against the floor, picking up one of the broken legs before sliding it under my belt, and continued to move forward. As I walked, I began to hear this soft buzzing, almost like a whistle coming from the phone. I checked mine, which to my surprise and frustration was completely dead despite being at 90% before even stepping into the elevator. I tried to determine how long I've been walking, but this place felt timeless, as if frozen in it. Even when I began counting to keep track of time, it felt like I was off. After what felt like hours, I spotted a door not too far ahead, with an obscenely shiny silver handle. I made a break for it, pulling it open with enough for it to nearly snap one of the hinges, and ran into another strange room. I felt like I should have been angry, or scared, or something, but all I felt was a sudden rush of awareness. This room looked like the last, only this one was what I can only describe as inverted. The floor now carpeted and the walls now wooden. In this room, however, there was a rather large number of fans on the ceiling, one I'd say every 10 feet. Despite this, I didn't feel cold at all, not even the slightest breeze. Once again, as I was completely through, the door behind me closed and disappeared. I took this time to examine the now accessible ovocals. Each desk was made out of metal, with wooden drawers underneath. Each ovocal wall had the exact same photo of a spilt water bottle pinned to them, and every desk had the same calendar, all marked down at January 7th, 1977. Once again, as I moved forward, the room began to warp, this time appearing to grow before quickly shrinking back to its original abnormal size. The room's sound of running ceiling fans was slowly replaced with what sounded like a low, deep groan. It sounded like a man gargling rocks, mixed with a wounded animal of some kind. Once hearing this, I quickly began to pick up my pace, not wanting to stick around and figure out what it was emitting that noise. Once I finally reached the end of this room, Rather than a door, I was met with a hallway splitting off both left and right. I examined both sides. The left seemed to end at a dead end, while the right ended with a complete void of darkness. Choosing to examine the left side caused empty rooms completely devoid of light. As I studied the wall, I noticed a hole in it, one large enough to peer through. I did so to see yet another strange room. From what I could see, this one was far different. A narrow, almost apartment-like hallway. The walls were lined with red doors. Each one seemed to be open, just ajar. Figuring this was my safer option, I pulled the chair leg from my belt and prepared to swing. I cranked back as far I could and swung with all my power. Instead of making contact with the wall, the chair leg phased completely through it. Due to the unexpected lack of connection, I stumbled forward, and I too phased through. I slowly opened the first few rooms. Each looked like completely normal apartments, aside from all the lamps being on the walls. I searched the first 5. As expected, all completely abandoned. I took a backpack, quickly raiding the place for whatever I could. Call me a looter if you want, but I was running on survival instincts. I grabbed a flashlight along with some batteries, a lighter, before making my way to the kitchen. The moment I opened the fridge, my stomach rumbled. It felt like I'd be trapped in this place for days. I quickly cracked open 4 cans of peaches and devoured them. Not long after, I filled my bag with any canned foods and unopened drinks I could find. As I was about to leave, I remembered that sinister growl and quickly ran back to grab a rather large kitchen knife, which would be much more effective protection. After picking up on the fact that they all were identical rooms, I made my way forward. The walls would contain the occasional cork boards, all pinned with flyers written in gibberish and containing incomprehensible images. Unlike the previous 2 rooms, this one didn't look to change size and was rather normal compared to what I've experienced up to now. What felt like hours gone by when suddenly the LED lights above began flickering and buzzing. Before I heard a large crash come from behind me, I quickly whipped around to come face to face with the source of that haunting groan ... and it was far more haunting than the noise it had created. It was humanoid, but far from human. It was hunched down, crouched almost. Its arms spanned the whole hallway, at least 10 feet each. Its claw-like fingers punctured the walls. As it looked at me, at least I think it was, the thing didn't have any eyes, or nose, or ears, just an elongated jaw with a deep gargly moan coming out of it. I stood frozen in fear as I stared at the beast. Its head slowly began to tilt, almost till making a complete 180-degree turn. Suddenly its groan stopped, and for a brief few seconds we just stood there in a stalemate ... till it charged me. It ran at me, hands still dug into the wall, causing long claw marks to streak behind him with each step. I quickly lifted the chair leg, swinging down and luckily hitting the creature across the head, before turning and hauling ass like never before. The strike I managed to land didn't slow the creature down for long, as the sound of footsteps and scrapes against the wall returned soon after. I made it to the end only to be met at a dead end. No doors or turns. I began to panic, smashing the chair leg against the wall over and over as the footsteps grew louder and louder. Shortly after they abruptly stopped, I slowly turned around to see the creature almost inches away, groaning in my face. I remembered I had picked up a knife. I drew it and quickly plunged it into the thing's skull. Aside from a thick dark blue liquid I assumed to be the creature blood spewing from the wound, it had no effect. I slowly backed away, the creature getting louder as it began to step forwards. Instead of backing into a wall, however, I phased through one, falling flat on my ass onto my office lobby floor. I shot up and began sliding back due to instinct. Before realizing I had been staring at the elevator I entered at the start of all this, I kicked the door a few times, and sure enough, it was real. I reached back to notice the bag of supplies I had gathered was completely empty. However, the bag itself remained. Then my phone began to blow up. I pulled it out to see once again my phone was at 90%. And the time was only 5 minutes after entering the building. I let out a soft chuckle, before breaking out into all-out laughter as I brought myself to my feet. I had no idea what the hell happened to me or where that place was, but it didn't matter now. I was out. I don't take the elevator anymore. I've gotten quite used to the venture up the stairs. Doesn't seem like such hard a climb anymore. Probably for the best too. About 2 days ago, one of the IT guys vanished. Car still in the parking lot. He wasn't seen anywhere on the cameras though, and I have a strong feeling he got stuck on floor 8.